Thank you.
And we are live. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I welcome you to this new type of live. I mean, this new episode of Tekup Live, which will be a very special one because we do have Eudora Wang here from Hong Kong. And we are, for the first time, broadcasting at 1 p.m. here in Algiers time. It's already 8 p.m. In Hong Kong, and that's a very special thing. So I would love to welcome you, Eudora, for being here, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you so much for making the time arrangement for me. I know it's very difficult in considering the 7-hour time difference between us. So a brief introduction of myself. I'm Eudora. I'm a senior reporter at DealStreetAsia. So basically, DealStreetAsia is a Singapore-based news platform that we're focusing a lot on private equity, venture capital, and technology innovation across Southeast Asia, India, and Greater China. I'm based in Hong Kong, so my major focus is on Greater China region. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. That was a very good introduction. Eudora and I met last year in RISE conference in Hong Kong, which is the largest tech conference in Asia. But she was working for another company called China Money Market.
China Money Network.
Yes,
China Money
that was
Network.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, you were there covering the event, which was a very big and very interesting event. And since then, I've always been interested in the technology market and the startups market in Southeast Asia, and especially in China and Hong Kong. And that's why I believe that that this live will be very interesting. And this live will be a podcast. Just after that, you will find it Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and every single platform. So yeah, I was as I just told you this. I was very interested in this in discovering more about China and Hong Kong, and I think you're one of the best people who will be here to talk about this and to answer the questions that will be asked by me and maybe by our audience. And I know they will be very interested in to know more about the Chinese market.
Pleasure is all mine. Yes, definitely. I'd love to share what I know about the Chinese market. I try my best. And you mentioned about Rise, which is very interesting because we don't really have any offline events right now in Hong Kong, which is a huge shame, considering Hong Kong used to be a very lively hub for all the tech conferences, all the financial major events. So I hope everything will normalize very soon so we can meet soon, in Hong Kong and having that tech side of it back again.
Yes, I really miss that because it was really amazing. I mean, Hong Kong was a very special place, and I really loved every moment that I spent over there. And I really hope that one day I will have the chance to go there, and not only in Hong Kong. I mean, mainland China, probably Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia. All these places are really growing very fast. Eudora, just to start, and I want to know more about how things are going since the pandemic, since COVID-19 hit, and it started in China, in Wuhan, to be more specific.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a huge effect on on a very large scale on everything, but especially in the tech industry and the startup industry. How how did you survive? I mean, when I say you, I mean the whole regarding the industry, and how things turned better in the last.
Okay.
And I'm glad you're there, and I'm glad you're safe in Hong Kong.
Okay. For myself, I'm still hanging there. So basically, Hong Kong is still under travel restrictions for people in and outside. You have to be quarantined for 2 weeks if you want to go out or coming to Hong Kong. So that side has been a bit difficult as a reporter in the city, especially as we mentioned earlier, there's no really offline events and it's harder to meet people offline. So I think the market is kind of slow to some degree compared to the same time last year. But frankly speaking, in terms of the technology development, as we see a lot of offline businesses getting interrupted during the COVID period, because basically people won't be able to go on the street as usual, and they won't be able to meet face-to-face, which means that offline industry related, heavy offline industry in particular, has been interrupted a lot, and a lot of them we see go bankruptcy or even they are laying off people. But we do see a lot of online businesses at the same time reviving, and they are getting more traction than usual, especially healthcare, online education, SaaS, which is software as a service field. And I think companies providing online solutions and products to help businesses bring their daily work online. I think those kind of businesses have gained a huge traction during the period. And from the investment side, which is very interesting, well, we know that it's kind of like holiday season in January and in February in mainland China because of the Lunar New Year. And, so it's kind of slowed down in January and February. And in March, weirdly, we saw a huge spike on the fundraising side for unlisted companies in the Chinese market. That is basically, we saw actually $2 billion deals in the side. One is online education platform Yuanfudao. The company raised $1 billion. Another one is a $2.4 billion in a real estate technology platform called Beikeizhaofang. The company went public already in August. So the $2 billion deals is like totally a bizarre for us when we saw that, because you consider in the market that nobody can really travel. And when we go back to their investors, to their companies, they actually told us, like mega deals, $1 million or $1 billion, they have been in discussion for several months already. So it's just at the point in March, they basically finished all the paperwork, due diligence, meeting the team and everything before that. And when the China market goes back, kind of recovers approaching late March, that's when the time they can wrap up the final few stuff and make the announcement that, okay, we raised the financing rounds. But we also have some guess. Our best guess is like, because it's a market slowdown period, so we saw so many players, especially growth stage companies in the market, they are telling people we're still doing okay. Investors still have a confidence in us. They are coming out to show off the funds they probably already closed a few months before during the COVID period. So their consumers, the market will still have confidence in them. So that's kind of very interesting side we see from the fundraising in the private market. In terms of the IPO market, frankly speaking, in Greater China, so we have 9 stock exchanges across mainland Hong Kong. And during that period, we do see a slowdown in the IPO activity in March, in first quarter in general, actually, but in second quarter, because of the global monetary easing policies and the interest rate getting low, the company feel more comfortable to go IPO. And a lot of investors are just in the market, pumping money into the market, not only investors, but also the government side as well. So a lot of IPOs have been performing extremely well during that period, especially healthcare-focused IPOs, which is reasonable because, COVID period, that's kind of rising people's consciousness of healthcare. So those companies are doing very well during the period. So surprisingly, in July, I remember in mainland market, we saw over 70 Chinese companies go in IPO in single 1 month. That's, I won't say
that's a record.
Sorry?
That's a record, having so many
that's definitely a record in this year. Yeah, that's definitely a record in this year. And so over 70 IPOs in single 1 month, which is, a massive success, especially for their investors. But interestingly, their aftermarket performance doesn't necessarily in line with their IPO valuation. A lot of mortality after that. So, it's different. Like the government is trying to pumping money into the market, and investors are trying to get a share from the IPOs, but it doesn't necessarily mean those companies worth that much. So it's really hard to say. We have to.
So you think that the government did everything it can to help these companies and to try to help everyone to get over this pandemic and this crisis as soon as possible and as good as possible?
Yeah, I think that's the target, not only for Chinese government, but also for government worldwide. That's why we're seeing not only Chinese government.
But I think the Chinese did it well. I mean, they succeeded because they had the pandemic very early compared to other countries, especially in Europe and the US. And so had a very good effect very soon. Because you said that in July you had a record of companies going IPO. So it's already a sign of success of the measure that have been taken by the Chinese government.
Yeah, you can say that. And it's not just the IPO, right? We are looking at
Yeah.
daily activities of Chinese people. Everything has largely gone back to normal in May, I would say. Like everybody can travel already. Until now, I think 90% are already like just normalized, like the pre-pandemic period already. So
That's good. I want to go. I want to come to China then. Too bad we borders are still closed here in Algeria, so we cannot travel for. I mean, except for people who are going like for long-term visas and everything. But we actually cannot travel. That's very interesting talking about the this part. I mean, the pandemic, the crisis, and everything, because it was a global pandemic that affected every single market in the world, especially in the U.S. But before going back to talk about crises and problems around the world, I want to know more about how, I mean, before the pandemic and how your job was over there. I mean, how the situation was in Hong Kong and China, and how you were reporting a lot of activities with huge numbers in the Chinese market, especially when you say the greater China region, which means for our viewers, it means that mainland China, Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and all these things. Am I good in geography?
Yeah, so when I say Greater China, I mean mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau. And
That's
when I
cool.
say mainland China, that's mainland China only.
That's only the main.
Yes. Yes.
All right,
so,
that's cool.
because
Yeah,
I'm in
go
Hong
ahead.
Kong right now. So Hong Kong,
Yeah.
we still have probably around 10 to 20 new cases every day. And the border remained, travel restriction is still there. And hopefully we can get it lifted in October or in November. But I think in Hong Kong, the condition is not as good as mainland China. So we are hopefully, trying to see that maybe things will be normalized very soon, but we really don't know that.
Well, I hope the best for you guys in Hong Kong and for all places in the world who are still suffering from the crisis. So, what was the main thing that you like or you love about being a reporter over there in a very special region where a lot of things is going on every single day?
Okay, so my experience as a reporter focusing on Greater China is, definitely a lot of new things are happening every day. So basically, if there's nothing new, it will be very hard for us to do our job. And we see a lot of tech conferences being held in mainland China and in Hong Kong, because I'm based in Hong Kong, so it makes me easier to get connected with people in the field, talk to investors, talk to unicorn startup companies and analysts to hear what they have to say about the industry development nowadays. I mean, it's particularly exciting last year because we didn't have the COVID by then, and we still have just so many activities every day. But nowadays, like I said, it's kind of harder to talk to people, and especially to meet people offline. It becomes relatively saying less efficient compared to last year in terms of doing reports and doing interviews.
That's very interesting because I mean that's very bad because usually it's true that we have technology and we can connect like we are doing right now because we are far away and we cannot meet in real life. I believe that even if this is very convenient and everything, and people can ask actually questions and more people can watch us, but I believe that real events with offline presence is yet way better because the interaction between human beings is actually a very important aspect of having such relationships and talking more in depth.
I agree with you. I actually heard about that a lot. Like, I think being online, the benefit is that you can be more efficient. Like you can attend several different webinars in the same day, but you don't have to travel in betweens. But the real benefit of meeting people offline is that it's easier for you to get really connected with each other, to build the relationship. And I've heard that a lot from investors, from startups, companies, in terms of when they are doing investment or they are trying to raise a new fund. Especially, let's say, for example, for an investment company, venture capital or private equity firms in the private market market, when they are trying to do any new investment during the COVID period, I constantly heard from those investors it's harder for them to make a decision to do a new investment during the COVID period, because apparently they can only meet the team online and they can't be on the site to do due diligence, to see their factory, to see their labs or something like that. So without meeting people offline and without being really able to build a connection face to face, it's harder for them to make that decision. So that's why a lot of them told me that in Q1 they are spending a lot of time checking their own existing portfolios and see if they need more cash instead of going out there and sourcing new deals.
Totally agree about that. And yeah, I personally love meeting people in real life and having to have different competition about a lot of things. Let's a little bit to talk about China, this incredible country, this country that is making Donald Trump extremely angry. And I want to know more about the ecosystem over there in China and how it's big. It's very big. It's very large. And I want to know more about the difference between the different cities like Beijing, Shenzhen, Shanghai, and everything, and how what's special about every one of these cities and about the whole country as well, especially in concerning startups and technology growth.
Okay, that's a very interesting question indeed, because in China, it's still a very large country because we cross a huge region. We have a population of 1.4 billion. And, in terms of technology development, because we constantly track data in the China market, so one of the important elements we track is where, like, for example, if a company raised a new fund, a startup raised a new fund, we track where the startup was born, like its headquarters. And it constantly popped up on the table as it's always Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and Hangzhou, these few cities. They got a lot of tractions in recent years because they are what we call by Chinese people the first tier cities in China. So basically they are economically and socially and like social resources much more advanced than landlocked cities. So those cities, most of them are located around the eastern coastal areas, which is closer to ports and easier for transportation. And like back in last century, when China introduced the opening up policy, we decided to first develop those coastal cities and then develop landlocked cities. So that's why we're seeing cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, they're getting much more traction nowadays than landlocked cities. And between those cities, there are some slight differences, because Beijing is the capital city. And well, as the capital city, it has more like academic scores and more talents, I would say. In the past 1 decade or two, we saw a lot of programmers graduating from that city and joining new startup companies. So for the several largest technology companies we know about in China, like Meituan Dianping, Didi Chuxing, Baidu, like Tencent, they are all based in Beijing. So it's like a hub for technology. But nowadays, it's kind of, for Shenzhen, it's like, we would say it's like a second technology hub for China. But I think it's definitely gaining more traction. And I think most prominently is in terms of how support local government is towards autonomous driving. That's why we see like local domestic autonomous driving firms like AutoX, like Pony AI, they have their headquarters there. And we do see some of the companies that are moving their headquarters from other cities to Shenzhen because the local government are providing them with subsidies with very cheap rent. So it's easier for them to develop their businesses in that city. And for the city of Hangzhou, it is most famous in the tech world, most famous as the headquarters of Alibaba, e-commerce giant in China.
The largest one.
Yes, so the city is most famous for all different kinds of e-commerce platforms, and they have a lot of online celebrities. Online celebrities are part of the major element in Chinese e-commerce world nowadays because we do social e-commerce, basically people showing in camera and trying to promote their products or trying to promote products on behalf of merchants. So these like Hangzhou is more famous for the e-commerce side. And we also have Suzhou, actually. Suzhou is a city very closer to Shanghai. And that one is more famous for biotech development. And that has something to do with the local government initiative as well. So we're seeing, across different cities, there will be some slight differences in terms of which sectors they are more focused on. But I think in general, we're still seeing top-tier cities, spearheading Chinese efforts in tech development, while we do need, some more efforts in terms of more landlocked cities. But happily, we are seeing some improvements on that side nowadays. For example, where I'm from like west southern part of China called Guizhou. So the Chinese government is trying to build the province into a data center for China, and Guizhou is already like the data center that hosting the data for Alibaba, for Apple China, and for many other technology firms. So I think that's part of the focus that Beijing is trying to do nowadays, to make it a more balanced between East and West in China.
That's very interesting, because we just talked about how Beijing, when I say Beijing, I think it means the government, because it's all in Beijing and it's the capital and the central city. And I believe that's a thing in China, actually. When you talk about Beijing, usually you talk more about the government, the powerful government over there in China. And we almost have the same here in Algeria. When we talk about Algiers, we usually mean the ministries and the government and the prime minister and everything. Let's talk more about the people. As you said, 1.4 billion people is a huge market size, and it attracts people from all over the world, especially from the US. Can you tell me more about how things changed over there for the people, like in the last 10 years, and especially in the last 5 years, how the Chinese people changed and adapt to themselves to the technology, especially when we talk about WeChat, Baidu, and everything, and all the Chinese technology companies and technologies over there, because as we know, you guys have some special ecosystem. You don't have any of the apps like Airbnb, Uber, Google, and everything. You do have your own thing, which I love. And how this transition was possible for the people, and how is it going right now?
Okay, yeah, that's actually a very big question. So the answer gonna be a bit long. Feel free to interrupt me if you think I'm a bit wordy sometimes.
It's all right.
Okay. So for Chinese people, because I was raised in China. I think I'm basically experienced the internet development in China. I still remember when I was at primary school, and for the first time, I used the computer to have my first Tencent QQ account, which is a very popular instant messaging app back then. No, instant messaging software on computer back then. And I think it all started, like the tech development all started in the past 2 decades in China around 1997, around that period. And that was when, nowadays the largest internet companies like e-commerce major Alibaba, like search engine developer Baidu, like online gaming and social media platform Tencent was born. They were all born like 20 years ago. And back then, I think the internet and technology just started in China. And when people from my generation, we first started using computers, and I think the population, adapted computers very fast. And that's why we see, the burgeoning of the first generation of all those technology firms. I think back then, a lot of the ideas from tech side are kind of copy-pasted from the Western world, like what we are still using nowadays and still very popular, Xinglang. It's basically the Chinese version of Twitter, and people still refer to it as Chinese version of Twitter even nowadays. That's a basic concept that we know those models have been very successful in the US market. So entrepreneurs in China, usually they have some degree of education overseas. So they know the story already. They want to bring the story to the Chinese market. But what we saw, like in the beginning, is that they are able to use the model in China and trying to adjust it to make it more adaptive to the local market needs. And I think it already proved to us that local players are more successful than outcomers if we look at Google China, they entered Chinese market in 2006 and eventually decided to withdraw from the market in 2010 or 11, I think, around that period. I mean, political played a side in it, but a large side of it, as that then Google China had said by then, is that they believe that it's kind of harder for Silicon Valley players coming into a new market to really know the culture and know the user habits, and that's a part of reason is it's harder for them to make the changes. I think a lot of products and offerings brought from the US back at that time, they believe that when they develop something from Silicon Valley, it should be universally adaptive. And there should be minor changes to different markets. But it's different in China. That's why local players can play a hand in it. And I remember the first time when I shop online using Alibaba's platform called Taobao. It was when I was at secondary school. It's actually kind of slow for my generation already. But yes, so basically, I think it all started with computers, right? And then when it comes to 2010, 2012 something, we are moved from, using computers to mobiles and smartphones. And I remember the number of mobile internet users already reached 388 million population in 2012. And that further increased to 753 million US dollars by the end of 2017. So that's a huge enhance in a mere 5 years. So I think it all thanks to the burgeoning of how people are using, increasingly large number of population using computers and using mobile internet. The burgeoning market gave a foundation for the development of those, service providers and e-commerce platforms. So that's how in the first decade, in the 21st century, we saw the birth of companies like Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and JD.com. And I think after that, moving into 2010, we're seeing more, dynamics into the tech sector. We're seeing more consumer-faced services and platforms like Pinduoduo, which is a group buying e-commerce platform. It is e-commerce essentially, but it has a second layer on it, which is group buying. So it has a social element in it. Basically, you can get a discount when you refer the product to your friends, and that's the essence of their business. And we also see Didi Chuxing, which is bike sharing platform, and the Xiaohongshu, again a social e-commerce platform, and Ofo and Mobike. So and Meituan Dianping, which is a local service platform. I think most of them, entering into 2010, they're trying to develop more niche market demands, not really necessarily niche, but very different from what has already been offered by Alibaba and Tencent. So they are trying to find their own footprint in the market. So nowadays,
cool.
Yes.
Keep going. You were talking about nowadays, so it's cool. I want to hear that.
So nowadays, in the past 2 years and 3 years, we saw a huge wave of advanced technologies in China, especially on artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, what else? And software as a service, SaaS, and blockchain, and Internet of Things. So those kind of things are getting more traction. Getting more traction in China, especially AI. The government, I think in past 2-3 years, the government has been launching different initiatives or policies across the nation, trying to promote AI development. So it gives the industry a lot of confidence, and especially give investors a lot of confidence to make money into it, to put money into it. That's why we see the so-called 4 major AI unicorns in China nowadays, including SenseTime, which is based in China, and these companies are doing very well already. I think that's part of thanks to the government initiatives and huge funding into that sector.
That's great. I mean, when you talk about the government, I always remember about us, because we do have a very tight relationship with the government. If they do not want things to be done, they will never be done. So, and when you mentioned the initiatives by the government, by the Chinese government, I want to know more about how the legal stuff and how you guys had to make new rules and new laws to regulate some different technologies, especially when you talk about AI and stuff like that. Usually, you need to do this very quickly. Was it quick? And did you have enough like laws and stuff like that to help companies in new stuff that, you know, like when Uber started, you know, they needed to create some kind of law for that to make a to be able to have a legal business. What about the same thing in China, and how fast was it?
Okay, that's actually a very good question. Well, I think actually this question, when I went to the World Economic Forum 2 years ago in I think in northern China, they briefly mentioned about that topic. And I remember, you know, some of the experts at the conference, they were saying the AI, I mean, related regulations and laws on AI is not fully mature in China, not just in China. I think all like the rest of the world, the regulations are still developing. They're trying to figure out what to do to make sure that industry can develop properly, but at the same time, there will be proper regulation over it. I think it's the same situation in China. The government attitude, I mean, which is fortunately actually, the government attitude is they don't want to just force some regulation on the industry, and that will definitely, you know, kind of reduce the development of the industry. They want to make sure that we will have a like more comprehensive picture of the technology, and by then we can gradually develop the whole set of regulation. From my side, I don't really see like a very concrete regulation or laws on that side nowadays in China. But I do think, you know, the AI industry in China has been very much focused on not the fundamental technology development, but more on how it's applied across different industries. So in China, what we see AI has been applied to are more like education side. So basically, if you are having a lesson online, AI system can help you automatically match your teachers or help you do some of the job that can lift the efficiency of the course. Like maybe score your quizzes, which is easier, like save some time for the teachers basically. And we also see AI application on healthcare side, more frequently AI enabled medical imaging. So basically when there is enough data and enough X-ray photos, it's easier for the AI to help you diagnose, like early diagnosis of the disease rather than the final decision. Of course, they will need assistance of the doctors to do that.
Sure.
And I think we also saw AI application in public security sector in terms of surveillance camera, you know, facial recognition, which has already gained a lot of traction in China already, because they use the facial recognition to recognize the criminal face, and it can help them catch criminals earlier. I know it's definitely a very disputable area in the Western world as well, because that means the surveillance cameras are constantly collecting your facial you know, information and content and store it on the cloud. And yeah, that's very
which is a bit scary.
Yeah, yes, that's kind of scary. I mean, I don't know, it's really hard to say. I mean, I feel like in my observation, I don't really see any of my friends or my family in mainland China getting very concerned about that situation. I think the atmosphere from my like surrounding my family, more like we have a certain degree of trust to the government that we believe it's okay for them to do that.
Well, that's very hard to say because a lot of people, especially in Hong Kong, and that will be our transition to talk more about some politics, something that I love, especially when it comes to technology and politics. And before going to the US and Donald Trump, which is a very interesting topic, I want to talk more about Hong Kong. You know, when I was there last year in July, it was the start of the movement, the democratic movement of the people in Hong Kong who are protesting against the Chinese government and everything. And I had the chance to be there. I mean, I was in some kind of a protest, and it was interesting because in Algeria we had the same thing. So I have done protests all over the world, like in 2 different continents, and that was interesting. That was funny. the question is regarding Hong Kong, and it's a very, very important place. It's the third financial center in the world after New York and London. And you guys over there in Hong Kong have a lot of tech companies based over there, and not only tech companies, large funds, investors, banks, and everything. And this is a huge risk when it comes to this kind of political instability. How important is Hong Kong, and especially the Hong Kong stock exchange for the startups over there in China and the Southeast Asia, and how our startups or companies are doing to prevent a possible problems regarding what's happening now in Hong Kong?
Okay, I will try. So since you look like you're more interested in the politics part, maybe I can start with that.
Sure.
My focus is more tech side and deal making in the tech side.
Sure. Just talk about this. No need to go deep inside politics. It's not the topic over here.
I know.
It has a huge impact of what's happening.
So
sure.
When it comes to Hong Kong, of course, we were gonna mention slightly about the national security law, which was already introduced by Beijing on Hong Kong, and that's definitely that to some degree, I believe. I'm just saying this based on what I heard from investors and the startup companies. I think that to some degree, kind of influences startup and investors making decision in terms of fundraising or deal making. But till now, we don't really see any very practical introduction in terms of how it will influence the tech development in Hong Kong. So I would say until we really have a very material impact on it, I don't really see it will really splatter across the tech side as well. And Hong Kong, we has been touting their city as a gateway for foreign firms to get into China, and kind of like a springboard for domestic companies going overseas. And it has been like the whole time, and it is still. And especially after Beijing introduced the Greater Bay Area, I think in 2016, 2017, which is basically an initiative refers to link the cities of the 9 cities in southern China and 2 special administration regions, including Hong Kong and Macau, into a financial hub and technology development hub. So I think that initiative will definitely help boost the position of Hong Kong in the following decade. And in terms of the IPO market you briefly mentioned, I think Hong Kong is having a rising position for its importance as an IPO market, IPO locations for Chinese companies, especially during the natural political tensions between China and the US. And earlier this year, in April and March, we saw a lot of accounting scandals of US-listed Chinese companies coming out. And to some degree, the US listing, the US stock exchanges are already tightening scrutiny over Chinese IPO hopefuls. So from early this year till now, we already saw a lot of major Chinese internet companies coming back to Hong Kong for secondary listing, including JD.com, NetEase, and more to come in the following months. So I think it's actually a safe offer then as an alternative if the China-US relationship really goes south or worse in the future. At least they have a remaining location to financing and refinancing. And I think in terms of innovation for the for Hong Kong IPO market, we did see some change in the past 2 years. In April 2018, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, they reformed their rules for biotech companies to allow pre-profit, pre-revenue biotech firms to list on the board. That's definitely, opening up for the public market, allowing pre-revenue companies to go public on the board means that they don't have to wait for a decade or 2 decades until they can really reach revenue, because it's very hard for biotech firms to do that. as a drug developers, they have to spend millions, if not billions, if millions of dollars on it before they can really introduce the products to the market. So after the new listing rules means it's easier for their PEVC, venture capital, private equity, institutional investors to get exit from the deals. So I think that part to some degree also enhanced its position as a hub for Greater China region.
That's interesting.
And yes.
Yeah, you can finish with that. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yes, just a one last point.
Sure.
Actually, in the last month, we already saw, the Hong Kong, they passed the long-awaited Hong Kong listed partnership foreign funds, which is a new LPF region, but not only attract more private funds and family offices to Hong Kong, it will also accelerate the development of asset management industry in general. So basically, it means that it will attract more private equity funds to set their to register in Hong Kong and to find their business and investment opportunities in the region. So that's a good news. More recent ones as well.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, the recent news are here with Eudora. Thank you very much for this part. I want to talk more about, I want to leave a bit politics, although I really love when it comes to politics and technology, and to talk more about what China is doing to the world. We know that the Chinese market is very interesting, but we know also that China is actually exploring different parts of the world, including Africa and the US. But we will be talking about this later. But before, we want to talk about China and its relationships with other very large emergent countries, very markets that are actually in a huge development, like India, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And if you can mention other places, I will be glad to know more about it. How is China dealing actually when it comes to investing in other markets that are actually growing very fast?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I will talk from what I know, what I've been tracking, what I heard from investors and startups. So basically, it has been several years already for Chinese companies investing overseas or doing businesses overseas. So from the investing side, I think as the number of mobile internet users, the growth of number of mobile internet users in China getting kind of slower in recent years, because the market kind of reaching a saturatory point. So investors are trying to find more opportunities in emerging markets outside of China. Most prominently, I think, include India and Southeast Asia. And in Southeast Asia, in particular, like Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, those countries. So we see a lot of companies doing that. And in terms of the technology side, that kind of money not only comes from professional institutional investors. A lot of like huge tech companies are also doing the same thing. Like what we mentioned, Tencent, they are investing across India and Southeast Asia. And I think earlier this year, Tencent surpassed Alibaba for the first time as a major, tech backers, as a major tech backer in India market. And so I do think it's quite common for Chinese companies going overseas and Chinese investors going overseas. A major reason that I constantly heard from players in the industry is that because they've already seen the story in China. So they want to bring what they learned from the Chinese market to other emerging markets. And adaptation to the local market needs, it's easier for them to grow the business. And they have abundant money. For instance, in Southeast Asian market, we saw the market, excluding Grab and Gojek because they are very players in the market. The majority of the advanced technology and consumers and e-commerce platform markets in Southeast Asia are kind of early compared to the Chinese market. So Chinese investors, they are able to pump billion to make a deal that is 100 million US dollars worth into one single deal in the Southeast Asian market, which is kind of harder for local investors to do that. So it's quite apparently they have a natural advantage to make the deal and to do business in an emerging market because they've already seen the story. It's easier for them to become successful.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I hope that I mean we want to see some Chinese money in investing in the tech and startups sphere in Africa and especially in Algeria, because you guys, as you said, with the experience and with a lot of money coming from China, and I know that they want to invest in a lot of places in the world. Usually, it's also for political influence, but we don't care about that. We actually just want to try to grow as fast as these countries in Asia, because as I noticed, like places like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand are really growing very fast. I just want to tell all the people who are watching us right now live, you can ask your questions, you can comment with anything you want. We'll be glad to talk about what you want to talk about, and Eudora will be happy to answer stuff regarding China and the whole South Asian market. Of course, things that she actually had experience with, and trying to give the best to you guys. Do not forget to also to share the live to with your friends and groups and everything, and let people discover more about this incredible things, these incredible things that we are now hearing regarding the Chinese market and the Southern Eastern market as well. Do not forget also that you will be hearing this as a podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast very soon in the upcoming days. Just the time to take care of this. When I download the video and make it available as as audio only on these platforms. Eudora, let's talk more about the. Well, as you know, it's hard to exclude the U.S. from the equation when it comes to going public and everything. We know a lot of companies, Chinese companies, who chose to go public in the US, especially in the New York Stock Exchange and stuff like that. But actually, they are. Are there any Chinese companies part of the Nasdaq? Or I'm not sure about it because I didn't check yet. And before going there, I just want to know about what you told me about the recent July thing that regarding the companies creating another index for tech companies in China, and how this attracted actually tech companies, Chinese tech companies, to go back to China because it's becoming even more interesting over there.
Okay, sure. So your first question is Chinese companies listed in the US. Yes. It has been very common for Chinese tech firms to list it in the US because essentially American stock exchanges still has like much more international investor base compared to Chinese stock exchanges. So a lot of those internet firms, SaaS firms, technology firms, they chose to go US because basically investors are more recognized of their business models and technologies, so they can get a better valuation and raise more money from the market. It has been like that 20 years ago because we already saw, internet giants like Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, JD.com, and Xinlang, Pinduoduo. I mean, most of the technology firms we mentioned before, they are listed in the US, either on New York Stock Exchange or on Nasdaq. And it is still the same nowadays. But as I mentioned earlier, like an increasing number of those US listed tech firms are looking at a secondary listing back home, mainly because, part of the reason because of the geopolitical tensions between US and China. Another part of the reason is, the tightening listing rules for Chinese firms in the US. So it could make it harder for them to keep listed there, or for the following IPO hopefuls to go IPO there. So that's part of the reason why they want to, have a secondary listing location back home, so it's safer for them. But at the same time, if you are listed at two locations, that means you have to follow the regulations at two sites, and you have to conduct or the listing related costs at the two sides. You are paying double for that. So you have to make sure that you have enough money, you are large enough, you have a good, capitalization, not only in the US, but also in the Hong Kong market. So investors are more aware and willing to pay the money for you. I think, yes, it's gaining more tractions nowadays. And potentially we will see, continuing to see more US listed Chinese firms going back Hong Kong for secondary listing. And I think that's probably will gain more attention in the following month. But that really depends on how the geopolitical things play out in the future.
Yes, let's hope Donald Trump doesn't get crazy and do some crazy things about when it comes to China, because we just saw a few days ago the official ban on TikTok, lovely app, and also on WeChat. I mean, this will be creating a lot of problems, especially that when you were in China, we were only connecting via WeChat because you do not use other ways of communication, especially when it comes to WhatsApp and Google and Messenger and everything. So you think this will affect a lot the communication between people from everyone will be using VPN or so, or I mean, if you ban WeChat, it's hard for people in China to communicate with the world, right?
Well, I'm actually not sure about that, because frankly speaking, if you don't use WeChat, for my friends in the US, they can still talk to me using WhatsApp and other instant messaging apps. So I think
you are in Hong Kong.
Yes, because I'm in Hong Kong. So
yeah, but once you go back home in China, this will be a bit harder.
Could be, but they still have other communication platforms developed by Chinese firms. If we are talking about students or people who are now living in the US trying to communicate with their parents back home, I think they can definitely go for other platforms as well. I think the whole impact of Trump's upcoming ban on WeChat and on TikTok, actually tomorrow, right, it's going to be effective. So I think it's more for the company and for the geopolitical sides for China and the US government. We already, see TikTok trying to seal a deal with Oracle so that their operations in the US won't be fully stopped.
And be monitored, exactly.
So how it goes, we don't know yet. We have to wait and see. And especially, it could be very hard for the TikTok to, fully just offload their whole US operations and hand it over to a US firm. And
I can understand,
we already saw what's the Chinese government attitude on it. Right after, not long after the US government saying that either TikTok, you sell your US operation or you completely stop your operation in the US. The Chinese government said, okay, as a Chinese firm, you can't sell your technology, you can't sell your algorithm to a US company. So they can't do it right now. So it's really hard to say. We definitely, want to see how it ends eventually.
It's very interesting, actually. It's like a movie or like a series stuff from like a movie, like a Hollywood movie, trying to know how things will end, especially with the U.S. election in a few weeks from now. Maybe things will be changed if Donald Trump doesn't get re-elected. Let's go. Let's go to the market right now in China. When we talked earlier, you and I, about the movement from the consumer internet to the industrial internet, like when it started more for the B2C market, like business to consumer, and then it was like a huge, I don't know if I should say like a change, or it was like a growth regarding the technologies that are most going towards the businesses, like the companies, the corporation, the B2B section, which I personally prefer, because you usually know what your clients need, and you try to provide it as good as possible. How did this transition go in China, like we talked earlier today, and what's the impact for the yet B2C businesses going there and still operating in China or in other places of the world?
Okay, so for the transition from 2C, which is to consumer model, to 2B, which is to business model, I think it's still like kind of early stage in China, but we definitely see a lot more Chinese companies focusing on that part. For example, Tencent, I think in their latest financial results, they mentioned about that part, because they not only do online gaming and social media platform operating, they are also doing investing across whole different sectors to expand their businesses. And in their financial report, they said we are going to transit from consumer internet towards industrial internet. I think that's a sign for it. And And I would say, as far as I'm concerned, why we're seeing that transition, a very important part is the number of users who are using mobile internet. The growth of the number of the users using mobile internet has been slowing down in recent years. So it's not as burgeoning compared to the past decade, because we are seeing a huge increase in the past decade. That's why a lot of players going into the market trying to get a share and get some, get some profits from it. And that's part of it. Another part of it is the consumer side are very much, very highly competitive and very much grabbed by a few top players in the market. Like this, we mentioned Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent. They are all facing consumer side. So basically, we already have, online gaming giant, social media giant, e-commerce giant, social e-commerce giant. And when you are competing with those, hundreds of billions US dollars worth companies as a startup, where you can land your place. So it's very hard. That's why we're seeing, more focus on the two, businesses serving corporate clients compared to individual consumers. And especially the models, it has been very successful already in the United States. And that's why people in China are very confident that they can gain the same growth trajectory in China in the following decade. That's why I also heard from, startup companies, from investors, they are looking more into that sector than before. So yeah, it's definitely a trend, and it will gain more traction in the following years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting to go more to the business side, because, startups and companies will be more focused maybe on technologies, on AI and stuff like that. And it's usually more techy, I should say, than just like the consumer part, which is, by the way, very interesting, especially when it comes to TikTok as well, because as you said, the algorithm is a treasure, and the Chinese government isn't ready to sell anything regarding these algorithms to any U.S. company or any foreign company in general. Let's get back a bit to Hong Kong, this beautiful place that's actually hosting a lot of the trend and the news the last few years regarding startups and finance. And what I was told when I was in Hong Kong, when I met some people over there, like they are living over there for many years, they said that like in 5 years ago, or maybe 6 or 7 years ago, Hong Kong was more of focusing on the financial world, focusing more on money, banks and stuff like that. And they were not actually very trendy regarding technology. But in the last few years, it's actually changing, and people are believing in the importance of technology and startups in technology, and maybe specifically in fintech company. I don't know if there are any specific fintech startups. You can tell me if you remember some of them. How do you think Hong Kong will be more going towards technology in the upcoming 3 or 4 years regarding, based on your experience or a few years that you spent over there in Hong Kong and the changes you have been seeing?
Okay. I'll try my best. Actually, I haven't been in Hong Kong very long, 3 years in total till now. But yeah,
I think it's good.
Yeah, thank you. As a mainlander, living in Hong Kong, because I came from the world, basically everybody is using online payment, and we don't need to bring anything apart from our mobile phone going outside, right? We can settle our online payments and pay for transportation, and check a hotel or restaurant recommendation. Everything can be done on our mobile phone. And especially we have super app like WeChat, and Alipay, so it's very convenient. But coming in Hong Kong, especially for the first 1 to 2 years, it's very hard for me, because you have to bring cash everywhere you go. And Hong Kong is still a society that very much not very accustomed to online payment and very advanced technology in general. But yeah, definitely it's a financial hub still in Asia, and I think it's making some improvements already in the field. But frankly speaking, I think it's more from the government side. The government side is pushing out more initiatives, including what we mentioned previously, the big Bay Area as part of the initiative trying to connect Hong Kong with the southern Chinese cities, including Shenzhen, to help its financial and technological development, to get more, financing, get more talent. That's from the government side. And from the startup side, we do see, a lot of new startups coming up, technology, fintech, but as well as, more advanced ones and more exciting ones like food technology, like using cultivated meat to produce food to supply, people. I think we're going to see more development on that side as well. But it's very hard. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to, give you a prediction in terms of what will happen in the following 3 to 5 years.
That's sure. I mean, I was expecting, just like as you said, like it's a very subjective way to talk about this because nobody knows what's about to come in the future, and I agree that things are changing very fast, and you cannot be updated regarding all these things. And that was like we have I think that we're gonna take some questions of people who've been here. We did have some people saying good morning in Chinese. They just did the translation. I don't know if it's Chinese or Cantonese or Mandarin. I mean, there's a difference between these two languages completely between mainland China and southern mainland China and Hong Kong. So we had this question from Amin saying, do you think that China is a good option for foreign startups to scale up there? I think that's an interesting question regarding the startups wants to discover a larger markets, and Chinese one being the one of the biggest one in the world.
It's definitely a very important question if you are seriously considering into the tech side in China. Mainland China, no, it's not a good option for foreign startups to scale up there. But Hong Kong could be a good option. Like it could be a gateway for foreign firms to enter into the China market. But still, I think China market is a very tricky one for foreigners. If you don't really know about the Chinese culture, you don't speak the language, it could be very hard for the firm to scale up. Because frankly speaking, I think most of Chinese people, they are still, not very comfortable with talking in English. And it will take some time for the country to fully open up financially and or society-wise. So unless you have a Chinese team helping you with some local expertise and local knowledge, it will be easier. But essentially, I think it could be very hard for foreign startups to start in China as a beginning point. But Hong Kong could be a very good option. Yes, because Hong Kong is basically a very national city, as everybody may know. So could consider that city alternatively.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, I've been there, and people talk in English. I mean, I think almost everyone can talk in English, and they are using some stuff around the world, like using apps and using different services, global services. So I think it's going to be way easier for people to go there, because we do have some people from Algeria in Hong Kong, but mainly it's like for investing or stuff like that, but not specifically in technology and startups. They usually import some goods and stuff like that. So not really interested regarding this. We have this. Hello guys, thanks for the initiative. Well, thank you for being here. I want to just one question: how Chinese government convince people to use WeChat in their daily life, the hotel booking, train, and etc. I think we talked about this. Just, I mean, because the question was asked a few minutes ago, just before we talked about the how WeChat actually is changing. I mean, made the life of Chinese people way easier, and now it's almost impossible to just stop using it, right?
Yeah, I think that's actually I think that question, because the Chinese government don't convince people to use WeChat, right? The company convinced people to use WeChat because it's their app essentially. So in my memory, because WeChat comes after QQ, which is the let's say first popular generation of Chinese instant messaging app, and WeChat comes in probably in 2012 around, or 2010, around that period of time. And in the beginning, it's only an instant messaging app that basically you can message your friends and do video chats in the beginning. It doesn't really have that payment option, or link you to mini shop that you can buy products. And I think back then it's like Tencent is gradually expanding its options when they have enough user base here using the instant messaging app. It's very logical for them to consider why we don't monetize that group of user base we have. So that's how they introduced the WeChat Pay section, which is online payment system that allows you just to scan on a QR code and settle your payment. And later on, they introduced, WeChat mini program, which is what they are trying to heavily invest into nowadays, because basically WeChat mini program allows third-party merchants to set their own mini program within this mobile app and providing service to WeChat users. So they are basically building a huge ecosystem for third-party merchants. They are serving to be on that area already. So I think in the following years, as what they mentioned in their financial reports, they will heavily invest into that area.
That's very interesting. I think that other countries should as well do the same thing, especially here in Algeria, that we are just starting, to use e-payments and start using these things. And the government is actually trying to encourage people to use online payments and to try to find some new solutions for mobile payments and stuff like that. Let's hope we do that as fast as you did, guys, and not waiting like for many years to have such a basic thing, which is e-payments. I don't know if we talked about almost anything. If you think, Eudora, I have forgotten anything, you can tell me. And I think we talked about a lot of things regarding the Greater China region, startups, investment, the US, Donald Trump. We talked also about the investment, about this situation, about maybe the last thing that I want to talk about. And if you have anything else you want to add, please feel free to do so. What do you think about the few months, left this year? You think that things are getting like better based on what we are seeing this summer? And especially now, like in the US, this week was a very busy week for tech companies going public, making IPOs like Snowflake, like Unity, and other startup that I forget the name, but especially these two giants going public this week, which is a very interesting move, especially in this period of the COVID-19 still there in the US and Europe. How do you see the few months left this year, and are things getting better in China and Hong Kong?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in China, it's already like 90% back to normal already. So all
Amazing.
the business so we are seeing, startup companies continue their offline operations, and investors talking to new investees, trying to source deals and bet on the next big thing. So in China, I think in the following month to come, we will see more business activity for sure. But on the IPO side, we are already seeing an IPO boom. A lot of companies going IPO, and they are being valued much, like very high in the market. So it's very hard to say in the following month. We'll probably see more volatilities in the market, because their aftermarket performance doesn't necessarily, in line with their IPO valuation and the business itself. So probably we will see more volatilities on the IPO side. But in Hong Kong, I don't have the crystal ball. I just hope I can get out of Hong Kong soon enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been stuck here for quite a long time already. So I just wish everything will be normalized soon and people will be able to travel again.
Let's hope that, and let's really wish that things will be better before the end of the year, because a lot of expectation, people saying that we will need many years to get back to normal like we were before, especially when it comes to industries like aviation and other industries that will need a lot of time to recover from this crisis. And I hope that things will be as good as possible, and we can beat this virus. We just to check some comments before wrapping up. We do have this answer from Zach, who answered another question I mean, if you remember the question of, do you think China is a good option for foreign startups to scale up? He said that for him, 100% sure, you need to expose just your idea, and that they give you all in max 10 days in the village, few hours in big cities. I don't know if it's that easy, but I believe that he's encouraging, I mean, to go to China and to try to know more about the company. I don't know if you, what do you think about this?
I think, yeah, I think
Takes more
it will
time.
definitely. It could be very beneficial if you can go to mainland China, visit Starbucks companies on site, so have a better idea of how they operate and how they serve their consumers or corporate clients. That could be much better than, we just sit here or in a foreign country thinking about going into the China as a starting point.
Exactly, I totally agree. And here's another comment. I hope you saw my answer. Yes, we did, and we commented your answer. Thank you for sharing this. We have this last comment. Armin, thank you for this live. Thank you for being here. I would like to ask about the upcoming opportunities that China is offering for the Algerian market in general. Well, I don't know if we will be able to know specific opportunities for the Algerian market, but I believe that you should go there and see what you can do. We have a lot of Algerian people going to China for PhDs, for master's degrees and stuff like that, and we do have a lot of students over there. We even had some of them in Wuhan. I think I remember in the beginning of the crisis, and we have a lot of people over there. I think that the best way to, well, if you want to invest in China, which is a very large country, or if you just want to start something over there, I believe that the best thing is to know more how things are going. And if you are seriously thinking about moving into China, I think it's a good idea. Do you agree with that, Eudora?
Start with Hong Kong first, not rushing to mainland China. Could be a bit difficult, without being able to
Yes.
speak the local language.
Totally agree. And yes, from a perspective, like I've been to Hong Kong last year for a week or so, and I believe that it's one of the most beautiful cities. It's very active. It's hot. It's even hotter than Algiers or any other place in Algeria, but it's fine. You can like it. Rent is very expensive, which is comprehensible regarding the number of people over there and how business is going over there. But I think that it's a very interesting place, a very special place in the world. And I encourage every one of you at least to go visit Hong Kong and try to know more about it. Let's hope that we can have the travel restrictions stopped, and for us to see people traveling again. And I really miss going to airports. Thank you very much, Eudora, for your time. We had a wonderful hour. We talked about a lot of things. I hope we'll be able to meet in the future. And I really thank you for everything, or all the information you had with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you everyone for listening in.
Thank you, everyone. Do not forget to check all our social media accounts on Facebook, Google, no, not Google, on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. You can check this live again here on YouTube or in Facebook if you are watching it on Facebook. And we will make it as a podcast in Spotify, and invite you to listen to all podcasts in Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and all other streaming platforms. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Eudora, again. And hope seeing you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope to see you soon. Have a great day.
You too.